Hi, how are you guys? So, have you guys been here before? Okay, so today we have three guest artists. Over on the left, we have Manuel Castro in the gray t-shirt, Sayuri Fukuda in the black t-shirt, and on the center bench, will be around the corner shortly, Dan Friday. So, so right now, Sayuri and Manny are doing some preparatory work. They're going to be melting some color onto that glass bubble. And Mr. Friday is making a basket. We'll see. Wait till he comes out around the corner. Be easier to see. How long have we been doing this? Oh, no. These are full-on professionals. Dan's been working for, I think, about 20 years. Dan works currently and has been working many years with Dale Chihuly. He's one of his main glass blowers. He's taught at the world-famous Pilchuck Glass School, and he has exhibitions all over the country. Right now, he currently has an exhibition at the Habitat Gallery in West Palm Beach, Florida. So if you look up on the big screen, you'll see some of Mr. Friday's work. Mr. Friday is a Native American, and a lot of his work is influenced by Native American traditions. Are you guys familiar with how the glass blowing works? What about you? You're looking a little quizzical. Would you like me to? Yeah, sure. Okay. Basically, we have two kinds of furnaces. We have the glory holes and the glass furnaces. The glass furnaces are the ones where you see the square hole in the steel wall and door closed. Behind that door, we have a big ceramic tank, and in that ceramic tank is 1,000 pounds of molten glass. We keep the molten glass at 2,100 degrees. If you look up on the big screen, you'll see a diagram. And at that temperature, the glass has the consistency of honey. So if you can imagine a giant crock pot full of honey, that's what our glass furnace is like. When we want to get it out to make stuff, we take one of those steel pipes that they're holding, and we dip it into the molten glass like you dip one of those wooden honey dippers into a jar of honey. We dip it in, twirl it around, a little bit of the molten glass sticks to the end of the pipe. The pipe is hollow, so when you blow, the ball of glass blows up like a balloon. When we want to make something big, we dip it in, blow a little bubble, let it harden. Then we dip it in a second time, or a third time, or a fourth time. And we just keep building up the glass in layers. All the glass that's in our furnaces is clear. It has no color. We buy colored glass separately in the form of these bars. We buy it like an artist buys paint. We heat up a chunk of whatever colored glass we want to make it, and then we blow a bubble of clear glass from our furnace, and then we melt a layer of colored glass over the clear glass. We'll then dip that in more clear glass. So what you end up with is something that looks colored, But if you cut through it, you'd see it's just that one skinny layer of color. Now, in a big factory where you're going to make 1,000 things, they're all going to be the same color, then you just melt a big tank of colored glass and dip into it. But here, we're making a red thing, then a purple thing, then a blue thing, so we color each piece individually by melting on a layer of colored glass. Are you familiar with the work of Dale Chihuly? Yeah. So all that work is colored in this manner. He has thousands of these bars of colored glass, and then he melts on a layer of color for each of the pieces. You can really only color the glass itself when you first cook it up from scratch. The things that color glass are mostly metals. So you take the raw ingredients of the glass, sand, soda ash, and lime. And if you cook it up with cobalt, you get blue. Chromium, you get green. A little bit of gold, you get pink. So it's not always a color that you would expect. But it's mostly, not all, but mostly metals dissolved in the glass that give it its colors. I'm down to, I got one in here that just fit in, I got three, so no immersion. Okay. So in the center of the workshop, the man sitting down with the black shirt is Dan Friday, our guest artist. So as you let that cool and stiffen a bit, and then he's going to dip it in more clear glass. I think that's... The gray pad in Dan's hand that he's shaping the glass with is just folded up newspaper soaked in water. The man crouched down to the left of the workshop bench, he's the guy that's blowing. So he's blowing through the steel tube and inflating it as Dan shapes it. He's making one of his basket forms. Could we put up, I think it's the first slide of Dan Friday's? So it's going to be a form similar to that, sort of based on Native American baskets. Woven baskets, yeah. Nope. What? They are bright, but there's no harmful rays coming off the furnaces. The real danger in this studio is none of the things that you would expect. It's not getting cut, it's not getting burned, it's not breathing chemicals. The real danger in this studio is the repetitive motion injuries from the constant turning of the pipe and from the weight being way out on the end. Now, when they're making small things like they're making today, that's not really an issue. But sometimes we make things, sculptures that are 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds. And when you got 40, 50 pounds out on the end of that pole, there's a great deal of stress on your forearms, wrists, things like that. Now, all glass, when it's hot, looks some shade of orange. The orange color that you're seeing is the glow from the heat. So, if you look over here, can you see this pattern that he laid out, this basket pattern? That's the same colors as is in that piece that he's working on now. So it's all these greens, but of course now the thing is really hot. All you're seeing is the glow from the heat. Over on the left, Manny and Sayuri are about to do what's called a cane pickup. Sayuri in the black shirt is heating up the cane. The rods are colored glass, which are going to become stripes. Manny has a bubble of colored glass, and he's going to roll the stripes onto his bubble. We'll melt those in. Each one of those sticks of colored glass will become a stripe in the final object. So to the left of the workbench, Greg in the gray shirt is blowing. Mr. Friday, Dan Friday, our guest artist, is shaping the glass using a pad of wet newspaper. Now he's squeezing the glass and making a sharp notch in it. That notch will be the place where he can break the glass away from the metal pipe. So if you look at the glass with the light of the glory hole behind it, you can see the pattern a little bit more clearly. So it's just like blowing up a balloon. You don't have to blow terribly hard. If you can blow up a balloon at a birthday party, you have enough lung power to blow glass. Do you guys have any questions? What? Yes, they're right. Look right here. Can we get maybe a close-up on the Marini on the table? See if we can get a camera on it. Do you see this pattern here? So it's made up of these little rods of glass. They're assembled like a little mosaic. And he heated that up, fused it into a sheet, and then rolled that sheet up into a tube, closed the end of the tube, and then he has the pattern melted in to the glass like you see there. Oh, look on big screen. We have excellent. So you can see. So he assembles the mosaic pattern. We make that into a bubble, and that's what you see here. Glass, man-made glass, is about 4,000 years old, 4,200 years. Glass blowing is about 2,000. Started in the Middle East. We think where Syria and Lebanon are now. As we get further on in the process, the glass is a little bit cooler. You're starting to see some hints of the actual color. Still, it's the exact same color as here, so you're not really seeing the green yet. But it's a little cooler, and you can see the pattern a little more clearly. The next thing we're going to do is transfer our glass piece from the rod it was originally blown on to a second steel rod called the punty. Over on the far right, Greg is preparing the punty. So we're going to stick Greg's rod onto the bottom. We're going to break the glass away from this pipe, and then it'll be held from the bottom, and then he can shape the top. No, people. Yeah, they made all these little rods of colored glass, and then he's assembled them like a little mosaic pattern. Here comes Greg with the punty, P-U-N-T-Y. Stick it onto the bottom of our basket. When they feel that bond is strong enough, and they'll break the glass away from the original pipe. A few drops of water, a little tap, and off it comes. So now it's held from the bottom, top is exposed, the top can now be heated and shaped. So we're going to add a little contrasting colored stripe to the top of the basket. When we wind on a little stripe of contrasting colored glass, it's called a lip wrap. So we're going to widen the opening a little bit. The tool in Mr. Friday's hand is called the jacks. He presses against the inside to widen the opening. Each time we heat up the glass, it only stays soft for a little while. So you stick it in that big round furnace, the glory hole, get it hot and soft, take it back to the workbench where we can shape it a little bit. When it starts to get stiff, we'll return to the glory hole and warm it up again. Flash glass is just has two or more colors, just thin layers of colored glass, one over the other. So it could be clear with a layer of red on it. It could be blue with a layer of green on it. Just means it has two different colored layers. So our basket's just about done. Everything that we make here has to be cooled off slowly or it'll break. So we're going to take the glass off the metal rod and place it in our annealing oven where it'll be cooled slowly overnight. One of the glass blowers has put on some protective clothing. He's going to grab the finished basket. And he's going to carry it to our annealing oven where it'll be cooled very, very slowly. A few drops of water on the joint between the basket and the metal rod. The cold water will crack the hot glass. A little tap, off it comes, and into the annealing oven. (920 degrees). It stays 920 all day. We put everything we make in there till it's full, and then we start the cooling process and cool everything down all at once.
We saved that lip wrap, right, Taylor? Sweet. So this next basket I'm going to do is a traditional fern pattern. Really cool. Yeah. We
Is that in the archives? It's great to study all my family's baskets. And the fern is a really big Coast Asian sign, and it kind of looks like a U. I'll open it up and you'll see. But it's a beautiful pattern, and it's been great to study in Dale's at the boathouse. He's got an awesome collection of Indian baskets, and so even furthermore is to go to the Burke Museum and go through their archaeological and ethnology departments and check out all the baskets. So I feel real fortunate. You know, they have a lot of my great-great-grandfather's personal effects in the museum. So it's
wow, that's
it's a
awesome.
treat. And so it's a great way to connect with the contemporary modern material and kind of revisit a lot of what my family and history has done. So rock on, Museum of Glass. Thank you. So I will.
So you got the ferns in here in the grow?
I'm going to open this This is called a lightning basket. This pattern here is a lightning basket. And we'll be doing 2 or 3 more of those. I have a commission for 15 of them, so we'll be making those today. But this is a special piece. I'm working on a panel for one of the heads of the Burke Museum.
Are you filming, so should I be quiet with the mic?
Yes. You're doing this today?
Doing it right now.
Right now?
Right now, baby. I mean, we'll probably have about half an hour before we're like in full motion because they got heated back up.
Okay, so we got a half hour until it's going to get...
I'll roll it up in, let's say, 20 minutes.
Okay.
Or less.
Hey, Walt, could you get on the headset and tell Jay to bring the Steadicam down?
This is a
Awesome thing.
traditional, it's a,
Do we need to, you want the music off?
Yeah, if you could for a minute, yeah.
this is based on
Tell
a
'em to
traditional
fade this
fern
audio
pattern
up,
of
too.
Coast Salish baskets, like the residency I did here at the Museum of Glass with the Evergreen Longhouse
Right.
and the Skokomish and the Chehalis tribes. This is a Coast Salish design. My Aunt Fran was a legendary Coast Salish weaver, and so it's been great to kind of visit this work and kind of connect with the family history and also this great contemporary medium of glass. Likes for likes, Insta below. Yeah, it is like Christmas though, huh? I gotta pack it good. So this pattern, these represent the ferns. And so I guess it's upside down. You would look at it like this, and you can see how beautiful the canes are. Yeah, we'll roll it up. The top of the basket will be up here. We'll do a blue lip on it. And these gray or black lines, these represent the ferns. It's also really close to what's called a salmon gill basket design. But the salmon gill comes down and doesn't terminate. It goes the other way. You know, it's great, the patterns of the, you know, the ancient basket weaving. Yes, we're going to do a turquoise lip. Okay. We're going to do a big, do you need a bigger fork? This is a bigger plate. Feeling strong? You got it.
Yeah,
good.
feeling strong. It's just that,
So this is about 2 or 3 hours to put it together, maybe more like 4, and then about 3 or 4 hours of cane pulling to make all these parts. And I sit together and get a cup of coffee and just crush the podcast, and here we go, fern basket. Let's roll it up.
nice.
Yeah. Here. What do I need to do? We need a bigger block.
I keep getting my shadow in it.
Zoom feature.
So we're getting ready to pick up the next pattern. This is the fern pattern. It's a traditional Native American basket pattern. He's laid it out in the little rods of glass called cane. And now we're going to place it on that steel rod that's called the pastorale. And we're going to warm it up, and then we're going to make it into a basket. Look up on the big screen, you'll get a good look at the pattern. Place the pattern in the garage. The garage is that silver oven with the curved side. That operates about half the temperature of the furnaces. It's hot enough to warm the stuff up, but it's not so hot that it's going to make it soft.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, I'm gonna say. I don't remember putting it in there now. Oh shit. The battery. Oh.
Over on the left side of the studio, Manny and Sayuri are going to be making tubes of patterned glass that they're going to use in other pieces. So Manny has a hollow tube of black glass, which of course looks orange at the moment. Sayuri will pick up the white rods of glass that we're going to melt in there to make stripes. So Sayuri, over on the left, is warming up the stripes. Manny, in the light gray shirt, has coated his bubble with some fresh, hot molten glass. He's going to cool his pipe off a little bit. We place it in that trough and just spray water on it. That cools it down, makes it easier to hold. Sayuri will take the pastorale with the stripes, place it on the workbench, and now Manny will come over and pick up the stripes. So each of those rods is just a rod of white glass, and we'll heat it up, melt it in, and those will make stripes.
Oh, really? a motorized gimbal, so you know it stays. Well, it's not full down, but it stays perfectly level no matter what. And then it does like pan.
It's got like a gyroscope.
Yeah. Yeah, it's called a gimbal. Which is this thing. And it's motorized, so it goes. Yeah, makes it correct. No, we do the visual locking. Yeah.
Because it's tracked.
So like if you follow something, it'll track what you see. But no, it's not tracking. Yeah, no, it's not. It's not tracking moving.
They have the things.
Oh yeah, like on my drone you can do that. Yeah, but no, that's not.
So it should basically keep it steady.
Yeah, it's
and
steady.
No, I don't know anything about it.
Yeah. That's what it is.
I'm gonna learn something.
So then, and then you get bigger.
They use those things in rockets.
What?
Rockets, satellites. Like the gimbal.
Probably.
That's where that technology comes from. I remember that word gimbal when I was a kid. I was really interested in rockets. Outer space.
Yeah. Well, like.
Kids think about that anymore?
Oh, sorry.
Hi. How are you guys? Good. Have you been here before? Okay. We have 3 guest artists today. We have Dan Friday, the man in the black shirt, on the right side of the studio. And on the opposite side, we have Manny Castro and Sayuri Fukuda. Dan is going to be making Dan is a Native American artist from the Lummi tribe, and he's going to be making a glass basket patterned on the Native American woven baskets. And so he's assembled like a mosaic pattern after the sort of basket weave patterns. And we're going to roll it onto a piece of glass, and then we're going to blow it up, and it'll have the pattern melted into the surface. So can we put up one of the baskets up on the big screen? Just give them an idea. So if you look, so it's going to be a different pattern, a different color, but that's the general idea. So right now, Dan is making what's called a collar. He's put a big disc of clear glass around the end of his pipe, and he's going to use that to pick up his mosaic pattern. Could we put up the Marini on a collar? Do we have a Marini on a collar drawing? So if you look up on the big screen, That's basically what we're going to do. We put a ring of molten glass around the end of the steel pipe. We're going to fuse the parts of the mosaic pattern till it's like a sheet, and then we're going to roll that sheet up into a tube, close the end of the tube, and we'll have our pattern melted into our glass. So right now, Gabe, I don't want to get Gabe and Greg mixed up. Greg, I keep calling you Gabe and calling Gabe Greg for some reason. It's the G's or something. Call you Gabe. So now Taylor, man the center, has what we call the pastorale. And laid out on there is a ceramic plate, and on the ceramic plate is our mosaic pattern. We're going to heat that up until that all sticks together, and then we'll roll it into a tube. So you can see, can we get a shot? We have of the mosaic pattern on the table. So if you look up on the big screen, you'll see a similar pattern. So you want to heat that up till all the little pieces stick together. Oh, there we go. That's a nice shot. You guys have any questions? So now Mr. Friday in the black shirt is giving the glass a little bit of a squeeze. So you want to make sure that all those little elements are stuck together. We're going to flip the pattern so that it heats up evenly. And we'll go back into the big round furnace, the glory hole. Place some metal weights called ferretti around the pattern. Once we feel that it's stuck together, we'll remove those weights. Mr. Friday has been studying traditional basket weave patterns at the Burke Museum in Seattle, Washington, and at the Dale Chihuly Boathouse, where Mr. Chihuly has a very fine collection of Native American baskets. He squeezes the mosaic pattern with those two steel paddles. Those are called tags, T-A-G. You want the whole thing stuck together till it's a single sheet. Over on the far right, Greg is heating up the collar. And we use the collar to roll that sheet into a tube. So this is the big move. We attach it to that little disc and we roll the pattern We're brushing off any dust from the ceramic shelf. And then we're going to bring the two sides of the pattern together so they match perfectly. Greg is heating up our pattern, making it a little bit soft. And Dan is taking those tweezers and bringing the sides of the pattern together to match. Does anybody have any questions? If a little bit of the release that we painted on the ceramic shelf sticks to the glass, we want to remove it before we get the glass really hot. So you see he's got a little Dremel tool, and he grinds off any of that powder that's stuck to the glass. Mr. Friday's been working in glass for 20 years, over 20 years. So now we have our basket weave pattern rolled up into a tube. We're going to make a little pad of clear glass called a cookie, and we're going to use that to close up the end of the tube. You guys have any questions? Do you guys have any questions? If you have enough money, you can. Yes. I can't hear you. Wait till the torches. Oh, come on down. That'd be better.
Why did he use brush on it?
Oh, we paint a little clay onto that ceramic shelf so that the glass doesn't stick. And then if there, some of the dust is, gets on the glass, and we can just brush it off before we get it really hot. Yeah, it's we put on a clay-rich mud onto the ceramic shelf, and that acts as a release, so the glass doesn't stick to the ceramic shelf. But sometimes it leaves a little powder on the glass, and then we just brush it off. No, I'm the tour guide. We have 3 artists: Dan Friday, the man sitting at the workbench shaping the glass, and then we have Manny Castro and Sayuri Fukuda working on the workbench on the left. They're the guest artists today. I'm just a tour guide. Guys, good. We're making glass with fancy patterns. Yeah. Yep. So that's the one. That's he's patterned these patterns after Native American baskets, traditional Native American. Mr. Friday. Oh, if you look up at the big screen, you'll see. So this is the kind of thing we're making. So we take all these little mosaic patterns, we melt them in, and then we're going to blow it up into a big basket shape. It is really cool. Oh, you burn yourself a little, but you just stick it in cold water and then it doesn't hurt anymore. Yes? It's assembled. We take little rods of colored glass and we just make a little mosaic out of it. Yes, yes. So we assemble it on the ceramic plate. Then we pick that up and heat it in the big round oven. And these things get soft. And we give them a little squeeze and they all stick together. So, hold on one second. So we make the pattern. Oh, these guys are pulling cane. This is how we make stripes. So instead of making each individual stripe, we make one long rod that's maybe 30, 40 feet long, and then cut it up into small sections to use it.
How long have you been doing it?
Me? 40 years.
How does it stretch?
Well, we put it in the fire, and the fire makes it soft, and when it's soft, you can...
Yeah, and also until it like hardens up again, you can stretch it.
So when they've stretched it as far as they want to, they'll hold it up in the air for a little bit, let it stiffen up, and then they'll just gently rest it on those wooden ladders to cool. They'll break off both ends, and then they'll cut it up into smaller, more usable sections. So, ma'am, so we make the pattern. Imagine my piece of paper is that pattern. We heat it up, squeeze until all the little parts stick together. Then we get a disc of glass and we roll the pattern into a tube, close the end of the tube. Then we have a bubble with the pattern. That's it. So right now, in the center, we've got the tube part. We haven't closed up the end. So when he gets that all squared away, we'll pour a little pad of glass and we'll stick it on the end of the tube, and then we'll be closed up. We'll have a closed bubble. We can blow it up into anything we want. And the pattern will be melted into the surface. So here he goes. We've made the little disc. We call it a cookie. And then we'll stick the cookie on the open end. And then Dan will take it back to the workbench where he'll trim off that little edge that's sticking out. You guys have any questions?
Now I came in here a little bit behind the. Are you the artist?
Nope, I'm the tour guide.
The tour guide.
He's the artist. Dan the black shirt, sit down.
Yeah. So, what is the theme of his work that he's working on?
He's Mr. Friday is a Native American artist, and he's making these baskets based on Native American weaving patterns. And so this pattern that he's working on now, it's called the fern pattern. It's a traditional pattern. Can we put up the basket slide again? So the finished objects will look sort of like that, except this one's going to have a different pattern on it.
Does he have Native American heritage? Is that
Yes, he's a member of the Lummi tribe. Yes.
how do they not hurt themselves?
How do they not hurt themselves? Well, they practice a lot and they're careful. So these guys have done it for a long time, so they know how to do it without hurting themselves. Every once in a while, steel pipes get hot. Oh, nope, that's not what we're doing. Well, every once in a while, you'll see these guys run around the corner, and what they're doing is sifting powdered colored glass into the crevices between the individual pieces of cane. So We'll melt that in, and it'll accentuate the pattern. If you look up on the big screen, you'll see a camera. So we've sifted on the powdered colored glass, and now we're going to wipe it off and just leave the powdered colored glass in the little crevices between the canes. So we'll take that back. No, the camera's, the color balance on the camera is wrong. Yeah, so you're not seeing the true color.
Well, I just can't read that temperature. Well, that makes it wrong. Makes the color wrong without the color balance. Like we can see the blue and the white and everything. Right. But makes it sound like art.
So now Greg is melting that powdered colored glass into the surface. The round oven that he's working at is called the glory hole. It's a hollow brick barrel. The fire runs on natural gas and forced air, and we keep it around 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit. Once we get our pattern all squared away, then we're going to dip it several times more in clear glass, and then we'll blow it up to its full size and shape. Yes? No. They're professional glass blowers. Has anybody got any questions? You guys have questions? Anything you want to know? So you're putting on another application of the powdered glass to accentuate the crevices between the little rods of colored glass that make up the pattern. They're called canes. Yeah, called canes. They're not they're solid. You can look at one. You can't keep them. Those belong to Dan. They'll get mad. Eat those to make it faster. We're going to sift on another application of the powdered colored glass. We sift it on till it entirely coats the object, and then we wipe it off, and the powdered colored glass stays in the crevices, and that'll accentuate the lines of the pattern. It's kind of an orangey color. Let me see if I have something here that's similar. So there's a black fern pattern, and the surrounding pieces of glass are an orangey color similar to this, but not exactly. Yeah. There are guest artists. We try to have somebody here working every day so you can see different kinds of glass. So they've been invited by the museum. We're not paying them, they're not paying us. And so they're here so you can see glass.
Yeah, I've got this one. I've got white pearl underneath gold ruby, so it ends up being a pink line. Without the white, it's a totally different color. I have no pink lines in my house though, so that's what I wanted.
Yes, ma'am. Constructing. Oh, the canes and stuff and the tubes that they're making, Mr. Castro is going to take them back to his studio and make other things out of them. So what they're doing is kind of just preparatory work. So we won't be making anything out of them today. So for the EV, do we have a Dan Friday EV artist?
Right available. Is there a meet for artists? No.
So the man crouched down to the left of the workbench, he's the guy that's blowing. See, he blows through the steel tube, the blowpipe, and inflates the glass as Dan shapes it. So they're going to shape up that bubble. When it's shaped to Dan's satisfaction, Then we're going to dip it in more clear glass and add another layer. We'll repeat that process several times until we have all the glass we need to make the big object, and then we'll blow it up like a balloon. What?
Is there any reason why everyone wears black?
Coincidence. Arty folk. You guys have any questions?
Why he use blue gun for the air? You know, when he kind of the little
Torch.
No, not not fire.
Oh, the air? When we blow air on it, it makes the glass stiffer. It cools it down a little bit, makes it stiffer. When we put the fire on it, it gets softer and makes it softer.
Just control the
If you think of the glass like wax, the hotter it is, the softer it'll be. The cooler it is, the stiffer it'll be. So when we want to stiffen it, we blow air on it.
要做这么一个，how long usually make one piece from beginning to end?
Oh, it depends what you're making. It could be 15 minutes, could be 6 hours. These things will probably take. These things are probably about an hour and a half. Do you have any questions, ma'am?
Well, I just walked in, so if you want to explain the process to me, that'd be great.
Sure. That's the guy in the black shirt with the back to us. That's Dan Friday. That's our guest artist. He's a Native American artist, and he's making these glass pieces based on Native American basket weaving patterns. So we're laying out the pattern like you see here. Just little rods of colored glass. Just heat these up until they get a little bit soft and give them a big squeeze. And then we'll have a pattern sheet.
Is that what's making the
Yes.
lines?
Yeah, all
I
those
can't see
lines
it, obviously.
are these right
Oh,
here.
okay.
So we heat it up till we got a pattern sheet. And then we roll that into a tube, close the end of the tube, and then we have a bubble with the patterning. Can we put up the basket picture? And when we finally blow it up, it'll be something like that. Now, each of the ones we're doing have different patterns, different colors.
So this is not a finished product?
Not yet.
It is?
Not yet.
Not yet?
Kind of see the fern pattern on there?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's a traditional Coast Salish design. There's one that's really similar to this called the salmon gill pattern. This one's the fern. Salmon gill is kind of open at the bottom. And so this will be the bottom of the basket, and we'll break this bubble off and it'll be the top.
So he's going to do the whole thing? How long will that take?
I'd say we have about another 40 minutes.
So the old glass blowers where they used to blow, they don't do that anymore?
Oh yeah,
They
no,
do.
we love.
Okay. Okay. Just haven't seen it.
It's not a. It's mostly heating and shaping.
Yeah.
In real life, the puffing is only a tiny part of it. So now Dan's going to round that out. The tool in his hand that he's shaping with is called the block. The tool is made out of wood. It's stored in a bucket of water. As long as the wood is wet, the tool doesn't burn, nor does it leave any marks as he shapes the glass. Manny and Sayuri are doing what's called pulling cane. They're basically manufacturing stripes. Instead of, when we use the stripes, we use them in this sort of pencil size. So instead of making each one this size, we make a long one that's maybe 30, 40 feet long, and then cut it into little pencil-sized sections. And each one of these will get melted into another piece of glass to make a stripe. So the rods are called cane, and when we make a big long one like this, it's called pulling cane. It's just kind of our version of a taffy pull. To break off the two ends, Manny will snap it into a little more manageable sections. Yep. These are just little pieces of that. Man, 20, 21 actually. Nope. Yes. FridayGlass.com. Friday. His name is Dan Friday. So right now, Dan is shaping the glass. That gray pad in his hand is just folded up wet newspaper, ordinary newspaper. As long as he keeps it wet, it doesn't burn too much and it doesn't leave any marks as he shapes the glass. So now Dan's shaping it on that steel table. The steel table is called the Marver, M-A-R-V-E-R. It does two things to the glass. It shapes it, but it also cools it down a bit. What you're seeing is the glow from the heat.
So is it a
No, it's orange, several shades of orange, and then the fern patterns that are in black. As we get further on in the process, be cooler and you'll be able to see the patterns more clearly. Right now, you just see them mostly the glow. So we have our pattern. We have all the glass we need to make the object. Now we're going to blow it up to its full size and shape. So Greg, over on the left, he's the guy that's blowing. He's crouched down behind there. He blows through the steel tube, the blowpipe, and inflates the glass while Dan shapes it. The next thing Dan's going to do is called jacking down the glass. He's going to take a pair of metal tongs called the jacks, and he's going to squeeze the glass and make a sharp crease in it. That sharp crease will be the place where we can break the glass away from the metal pipe once we're done shaping it. How hot is that? 2,300 degrees. Yes, ma'am. Yes, this is natural gas and forced air. So it's just like blowing up a balloon. You can see it getting bigger. Dan squeezing the glass, making sure that that crease is nice and sharp. So when we're ready to break it off the pipe, we'll have a good clean place to break it off. So Greg, or to the left of the bench, is blowing. Dan, sitting at the bench, has a wad of wet newspaper in his hand, and he's shaping the glass as Greg blows. So as we get along a little further in the process, the glass we're working is not as hot, so you're starting to see the pattern more clearly and less of the glow from the heat. Each time we heat it up, it only stays soft for about a minute. So we heat it up, soften it, bring it to the workbench, do whatever shaping we need to do. When it starts to get stiff, we return to the big round oven, the glory hole, and heat it up again. There's two ways in which we heat up the glass. Sometimes we heat it up with the big round oven. Sometimes we heat it up with a torch. When we heat it up with a torch, it allows us to focus the heat in a particular place. When we heat it up in the big round oven, it kind of heats up the whole object. The torch allows us to focus the heat just exactly where we want it. It could be 2 or 3 or 5 or 8, depending on the complexity of your project. We almost always work teams. Rarely work alone. So the next thing we're going to do is transfer the basket from the rod it was originally blown on to a second steel rod called the punty. If you look up on the big screen, you'll see Dan has chalked a little circle on the bottom so he can see where the center is. We're going to attach the punty right in the very center. So we're just going to keep that warm. And while we're keeping that warm, Greg on the far right in the khaki shorts is going to make the punty, P-U-N-T-Y. Yes? Yeah, it's like blowing up a balloon. It makes it bigger. Just like blowing up a balloon. So Greg, in the khaki shorts, is preparing the punty. His rod, the punty, is going to act as a temporary handle to hold the basket from the bottom while we shape the top. So we're going to stick Greg's rod onto the bottom of the basket, and then we'll break the glass away from the original pipe and leave it stuck to the one that Greg has. It doesn't get as hot as you would think. It's not made of anything special. So here comes Greg with the punty. Hot glass sticks to hot glass. We'll press the two together. They're stuck now. When Dan feels that bond is strong enough to hold the piece, then we'll drip a little water where we want the glass to break, and then a sharp tap on the metal pipe will release it. He'll take some tweezers, dip them in water, drip a little water where he wants the glass to break, and then a little tap, and off it comes. So now the object is held from the bottom, the top is exposed, the top can now be heated and shaped. You guys have any questions? Oh, it depends on the reputation of the artist. It has nothing to do with the size.
Okay, so it's not the time really, it's the
It's not the time, it's not the material, it's the reputation of the artist. If I paint a sunflower, $50, if Van Gogh paints it, $5 million. So Dan's going to sort of clean up the opening, maybe widen it a little bit, and then we're going to add a contrasting colored stripe to the very top. When we wind on a contrasting colored stripe, it's called a lip wrap. Here we go. So we wind on. Guys taking notes or something? Oh, okay. Cool. Sometimes. So interesting. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You know, people get wrapped up and mesmerized by it. It's a great winter sport, not such a great summer sport. It gets kind of warm in here in the summer. So now Dan's going to widen the opening. The tool in his hand is called a parchophy. It's similar to the jacks, except it has wooden blades. So Dan is widening that opening. His assistants are holding a wooden paddle in front of his arm to shield him from the heat. Can we put up some of Dan's work up on the big screen? Dan Friday, our guest artist, has been working glass for 20 years, a little more maybe. He's worked with famous artists such as Dale Chihuly, Paul Marioni. He's taught glassmaking at the world-famous Pilchuck Glass School. And you can see his work in this area at the Stonington Gallery in Pioneer Square. He currently has an exhibition in Florida at the Habitat Gallery in West Palm Beach. Habitat, with spelled with an A. It's West Palm Beach, Habata, what? Habitat, yeah, but not with no I, with an A. No, that's in West Palm Beach, Florida. No, he shows all over the United States. Currently, he's showing his work in Florida. Everything that we make has to be cooled off slowly so it doesn't break. So we're going to take the basket off the metal rod and place it in our annealing oven where it will be cooled very slowly overnight. One of the glass blowers has put on some protective clothing. When he grabs that basket, it'll be about 1,000 degrees. few drops of water on that joint, a little tap, off it comes, and into our annealing oven to cool slowly overnight. So let's have a hand for Dan Friday and his crew.
What color glass would you use?
What?
What color glass would you use?
Looking at it. Clear.
That's for the whole.
Yeah, no, he's gonna dip it. He's gonna roll the pattern up into a tube, and then he's gonna dip it several times in clear, and then blow it up. So it'll be the same color that you see here.
Send Vivian, Lee.
What?
I sent her like 3 emails all night.
Yeah, no, let's show him.
Okay.
What?
There's some that are just like the ones that we've been doing, but I sent. There's some that are just like.
You want to see him? Can we play some of Dan's work up on the big screen? Just flip through it. Yeah, just click through 'em.
You'll see the one that we're doing, and maybe we'll pull that one out or whatever to show you what the ones are. Are you making it better? No. There's like, so I sent her like 3 emails, and they're all like 5 minutes. You know, they went all together. There's another one in there that's like, it's called the proper lightning basket, and it'll be like, it is the same pattern that we'll be doing the rest of the day. It says, that one. It's called.
So we're getting ready to make our next basket. Our guest artist is Dan Friday. Where's Dan? He stepped out for a moment. We've laid out a pattern in these little rods called cane, just the rods of colored glass. We've laid them out in a mosaic pattern similar to this. We're going to heat that up, make it a little bit soft and give it a squeeze till all the pieces stick together. Then we're going to roll it up into a tube, close the end of the tube, and we'll have our pattern melted into the glass. Does anybody have any questions? Do you guys have any questions? Taylor, sitting at the center bench, is making what we call a collar. He's going to put a ring of glass around the end of that pipe, and we're going to use that ring of glass to pick up our pattern. Mr. Friday, in the black shirt, he's pre-prepared some patterns. He's wrapped them up in the bubble wrap to get them here to our studio. Over on the left, we have Manuel Castro and Sayuri Fukuda. And they're making striped tubes that Mr. Castro is going to take back to his studio and use to make other objects. So Taylor, the man in the black shirt, center furnace, has just pulled out our pattern, our mosaic pattern. It's one very similar to the ones that you see here. We're going to warm it up and melt it together. Does anybody have any questions? Anything you've always wanted to know about glass but were afraid to ask? This is your chance. So the patterns are made up of these individual rods of colored glass. And now Dan is giving them a little squeeze so that all the little elements of the mosaic pattern stick together. So we put them in the fire, that makes them soft. And when we squeeze them, that sticks them together. Oh, those are just little steel weights. They're just little pieces of steel. They're called ferretti. It's just to keep the things in place till we get them stuck together. No, we get rid of them. Once the thing is soft and a little bit stuck together, we get rid of them. They're pretty much the same. There's two kinds of furnaces. There's the ones that have the molten glass in them. Those are the ones where you see the doors closed. Those run at 2100 degrees, and all the round ones with the doors open, those run at 2300. There's not a hot, a medium, and a cold one. So as Dan Friday, our guest artist, consolidates his pattern, over on the far right, Greg, in the khaki shorts, is making the collar. The collar is a pipe with a ring of glass around it, and we're going to use that to roll the pattern into a tube. So here we go. This is the money move. So we've picked up our mosaic pattern, rolled it almost 360 degrees. We're going to heat that up again and then bring the two edges together by hand so that they match perfectly. Yes, ma'am. No, we paint a release on this ceramic plate. Sometimes some of that sticks to the glass. So he's grinding off where the powder's stuck to the glass. So now we're going to clean up our cylinder with the mosaic pattern. This is a pattern Mr. Friday calls a lightning pattern. Once he gets that all squared away to his liking, then we'll pour a little pad of clear glass and stick it on the open end. Then we'll have a nice closed bubble that we can blow up into anything we want. You guys have any questions? It is a nice winter cozy spot. So we drip. Oh, we have to do it again. We're going to drip a little molten glass onto the steel table. We make a little pad. We call it the cookie. And we'll use that to close up the open end of the tube. The great pad he has in his hand is just folded up newspaper soaked in water, ordinary newspaper. As long as it's wet, it doesn't burn too much, and it doesn't leave any marks as he shapes the glass.
It's amazing.
So Dan's going to let his glass cool off a little bit, stiffen, and then we're going to dip it several times in more clear molten glass.
And it gets that orange because it's molten, right?
Well, the orange is the glow from the heat.
Yeah. 'Cause this is blue-green.
Yeah, it's like a sage, but it's really cool color because it's really hard to see when you hold it up to the light. It goes amber. It's like a two-tone. It's like that color. It's really dense now because it's not blown up, but once it's blown out, again, in the slides of my work, which I don't know where they are, but there's some. I use this color quite a bit, and it's an opaque color that's also translucent. It has some like opaline kind of qualities to it. It's opaque and transparent, and it really changes in the light. But yeah, you can see these are a lightning pattern. Thank you very much.
So now Dan is dipping into our big furnace and coating it with another layer of clear molten glass. He'll drip some of the excess off into that steel can. We'll save that. That'll go back in the furnace. And now he'll sit down at the workbench and round it out using the block, B-L-O-C-K. The block is made out of wood. It's stored in a bucket of water. As long as the wood itself is wet, the tool doesn't burn, nor does it leave any marks as he shapes the glass. The tool looks like a scoop, but we don't scoop up any water in it. We use it empty. We just want the wood itself to be damp. I mean, the block is kind of like a little mold almost. So you only make one shape with it.
Right.
The newspaper is more flexible. You make any shape you want.
He just seems to do them both the same.
Well, he first starts out with blocking,
Yeah.
and we just want to get the thing even.
Yeah.
And then when he goes to the newspaper, he's making it exactly the shape that he wants.
Right. Okay.
So it's another shape. It shapes it and it pulls it off the shape. got it.
After he made the tube.
We made the tube, put a little pad on the end, and then he shaped that up, and dipped it in more clear glass several times.
Right.
The kind of glass block you're seeing here is almost exactly what you see if you went to Venice. Because 1979, a number of Venetian masters came to the United States and began teaching the young Americans. So all this kind of stuff is classical Venetian glasswork. So the tools we use, what we call them, the way we arrange our teams, it's all straight out of Venice. So Greg here is blowing. He's blowing through the steel tube and inflating it as Dan in the black shirt shapes it. So it's just like blowing up a balloon. It doesn't require a great deal of lung power. If you can blow up a balloon at a birthday party, you have plenty of lung power to blow glass. The hotter the glass is, the softer it gets. The softer it gets, the easier it is to blow. As you can see, it's just getting bigger and bigger. So once again, Greg is blowing as Dan shapes it with the pad of wet newspaper. As we get further on in the process, the glass is cooler. You can see more of the pattern. The pattern was there all the time since the beginning. So the pattern is becoming clearer, easier to see, but the colors are distorted by the heat. The colors in that are pretty similar to the colors that you see in these patterns here. When the glass cools down, it'll return to its natural color. I don't know. Thousands of dollars. There's two kinds of furnaces. There's the ones that have the molten glass in them, the ones with the doors closed. Those are on 24/7. The round ones that they're working in and out of, those are only on during the working day. So now the glass is held from the bottom, the top is exposed, the top can now be heated and shaped. We're going to add a little contrasting colored stripe on the very top of the opening. Taylor over on the far right is heating up the contrasting colored glass. That's called a lip wrap, when we wind a little contrasting colored stripe. Has anybody got any questions? The torch allows us to focus the heat in a particular place. When we put it in the big round oven, it kind of heats up the whole object. If we want to focus the heat here or here or here, we use the torch. So widen the opening a little bit. The tool in his hand is called the jacks. His assistant is holding a wooden paddle in front of his arm to shield him from the heat. So that concludes our demonstrations for this morning. We'll be back in an hour. We'll take an hour lunch. We'll be back at 2:15. Well, we have to cool it very slowly on purpose. If we just set it on a table, it'd be cool in a half an hour, but it would shatter. So we cool it slowly in those ovens overnight, and that prevents it from breaking. Yeah, those ovens, they're electric ovens. We keep them at 920 degrees during the day, place all the objects we make during the day in there, and then at night we start the cooling process, and that has a little computerized thermostat that just slowly turns down the temperature.